Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Facade. Maxwell Thorne pulled into the driveway of his suburban home, the engine of his Tesla humming quietly before shutting off. The two-story house with its manicured lawn represented 5 years of hard work and sacrifice. 5 years of building a life with Laurel. He glanced at the passenger seat where a small velvet box sat. Inside was a diamond tennis bracelet he'd spent months saving for, a gift to celebrate their 5th wedding anniversary. Max was what people called an unassuming success. At 35, he'd built quantum solutions from a one-man startup in his garage to a thriving cybersecurity firm with 50 employees. His professional reputation was built on his ability to think 10 steps ahead, to anticipate vulnerabilities before they became problems. Quiet, methodical, and devastatingly intelligent, Max never believed in showing his hand too early. Quiet types are the most dangerous, his grandfather once told him. They watch and learn while everyone else is busy talking. That philosophy had served Max well in business, though Laurel often mistook his reserved nature for weakness. As he entered their home, Max heard Laurel's laughter from the kitchen. She was speaking on her phone, her voice dropping to a whisper as she heard the front door close. "I've got to go. He's home," she said, ending the call abruptly. "Working late again?" Max asked, setting his laptop bag on the counter. Over the past 6 months, Laurel had become increasingly distant, taking calls in private and disappearing for girls' nights that left her coming home in the early hours of the morning. Laurel rolled her eyes. "Some of us have a social life, Max." She tucked her phone into her pocket. At 32, Laurel Thorne remained as captivating as the day they'd met. Long auburn hair, calculating green eyes, and a smile that could disarm even the most suspicious observer. She'd once been a paralegal at the law firm Max hired for his company's first major contract. Their marriage had been swift, passionate, and in retrospect, perhaps too impulsive. "The party planner called," she continued. "Everything's set for Saturday's celebration. It's going to be spectacular. I've invited everyone who matters." Max nodded, watching as she busied herself with pouring a glass of wine. The anniversary party had been entirely Laurel's idea, an elaborate event for 50 guests at an upscale venue. Max would have preferred something intimate, but Laurel insisted on making a statement. "I have a meeting with Vince tomorrow," Max said, referring to Vincent Perry, the digital forensics specialist he'd hired 6 months ago. "Shouldn't take long." "Fascinating," Laurel replied without looking up from her phone. "I'm meeting Diane for lunch, so I won't be home until later." Diane Reynolds was Laurel's closest friend, or so she claimed. Max had met her only twice, finding her evasive and uncomfortable in his presence. That night, as Laurel slept beside him, Max lay awake staring at the ceiling. In another hour, he'd received the final report from Vince, the culmination of 6 months of patient investigation. Max hadn't started his marriage planning for its destruction, but he hadn't survived in business by ignoring warning signs. The first red flag had been the unexplained charges on their joint credit card, then the late nights, then the scent of unfamiliar cologne. His phone vibrated silently at 2 a.m. A message from Vince, package complete. Worse than expected. Meeting confirmed for 9 a.m. Max closed his eyes, a strange calm settling over him. Most men would feel devastated. Max only felt a cold, crystallizing resolve forming in his chest. Chapter 2. The Spider's Web. Vincent Perry's office was deliberately nondescript. A converted warehouse space with blacked-out windows and state-of-the-art security. At 45, Vince had the weathered look of someone who'd seen humanity at its worst through the lens of digital evidence. A former FBI cybercrime specialist, he now ran a private digital forensics firm that specialized in corporate espionage cases. Max had hired him officially to audit quantum solution security protocols, but Vince's real assignment was far more personal. "Good to see you, Max," Vince said, closing the door to his private office. "Have a seat." Max sat down across from Vince's cluttered desk. "I take it the news isn't good." Vince's expression was grim as he opened a laptop. I've been doing this work for 20 years, and I still get surprised by people's capacity for betrayal. He turned the screen toward Max. Your wife has been having an affair for at least 7 months, possibly longer. The screen displayed a series of text messages between Laurel and someone saved in her phone as DR, the alleged initials of her friend Diane Reynolds. The messages were explicit, detailing meetups and intimate encounters. DR isn't Diane Reynolds, is it? Max asked, his voice perfectly steady. No, Vince confirmed. It's Declan Reed. He's the Chief Operations Officer at Synapse Technologies. Max's jaw tightened. Synapse was Quantum Solutions' main competitor, a larger firm that had been trying to acquire Max's company for the past 2 years. Max had repeatedly declined their offers, believing his company's specialized security protocols were worth more than what Synapse was offering. There's more, Vince continued, scrolling through more files. They've been meeting at the Westridge Hotel twice weekly. But the real problem is this. He opened another folder. Laurel has been photographing your notes, technical documents, and even accessing your home office computer. She's been feeding information to Reed for months. Max's expression remained unervingly calm. Show me everything. For the next hour, Vince methodically walked Max through the evidence. Location tracking data from Laurel's phone, financial records showing hidden cash withdrawals, hotel receipts, and most damning of all, dozens of photographs of Max's confidential business documents found in encrypted folders on Laurel's cloud storage. The prenuptial agreement protects your intellectual property, Vince reminded him. But she's violated both that and federal law by sharing your proprietary information. Max scrolled through the messages between his wife and Declan Reed, taking note of their patterns, their meeting locations, and most importantly, the casual cruelty with which they discussed him. Poor Max has no idea, Laurel had written. He's too busy with his computers to notice what's happening right under his nose. After the acquisition goes through, he'll be obsolete anyway, Declan had replied. You'll be married to the COO of a unified company worth 10 times what his little shop is worth now. What do you want to do? Vince asked after Max had reviewed everything. You have grounds for divorce, criminal charges for industrial espionage, and a solid case to void the prenup clause that would otherwise entitle her to 30% of your company. Max closed the laptop slowly. Nothing yet. Our anniversary party is this Saturday. I want you to prepare 3 things for me. He pulled out a notepad and began writing detailed instructions. Vince's eyebrows rose as he read Max's requests. This is comprehensive. Are you sure? Entirely, Max replied. They believe I'm a spineless nerd who can be deceived and discarded. They've underestimated the wrong man. On his drive back to the office, Max made 2 calls. The first was to his attorney, Solomon Winters, a ruthless litigator who had represented Max since Quantum's founding. Sol, I need you to prepare divorce papers and be on standby this Saturday evening. Yes, I'm certain. I'll explain everything at dinner tonight. Max ended the call as he pulled into the parking lot of Quantum Solutions. His second call was to his head of security, former Marine Adrian Knox. Adrian, I need a personal security detail for this Saturday, and I need something retrieved from the Westridge Hotel. This stays between us. Entering his office, Max greeted his assistant Tessa with his usual quiet politeness. Your 11 o'clock with the Venture Capital Group is confirmed, she informed him. And Mrs. Thorne called to ask if you could pick up her dress from the boutique for Saturday. Thank you, Tessa. Please cancel all my appointments after 3 p.m. today. Something urgent has come up. As Tessa left, Max opened his desk drawer and pulled out a silver-framed photo from their wedding day. Laurel was beaming at the camera, her eyes shining with what he had believed was love. Max studied the picture, then deliberately placed it face down in the drawer. The pieces were in motion. Now he simply had to wait. Chapter 3, The Architect of Ruin. Friday night, the evening before their anniversary celebration, Max was finalizing preparations in his home office when his private phone buzzed. A text from Vince. All 3 packages ready for delivery as requested. Confirmation of hotel surveillance successful. Max sent a single-word reply. Proceed. He heard the shower running in the master bathroom. Laurel preparing for her last-minute salon appointment that evening. Max knew she was meeting Declan Reed at their usual hotel. The tracking software on her phone confirmed she'd been messaging him all day. His secure email pinged with a notification from Vince. The first file contained footage from the Westridge Hotel from the previous night. Laurel and Declan in the elevator, wrapped in an intimate embrace. Additional footage showed them entering and leaving the same room over multiple dates going back months. The second file held something even more valuable. Recordings of phone conversations between Laurel and Declan discussing their plans to use the intellectual property she'd stolen from Max. The most recent call, from just 2 days ago, was particularly incriminating. After the party, we move forward with the acquisition, Declan's voice said. Synapse makes the offer. Max refuses as usual. Then we reveal we already have his security protocols and client list. He'll have no choice but to sell, and at our price. And if he discovers what I've been doing? Laurel asked. Declan's laugh was cold. He won't. But even if he did, the prenup only protects him if you commit adultery, and it can be proven in court. We've been careful. No one has seen us together who would testify. There's no paper trail. Your idiot husband believes you're having girls' nights with your friend Diane. 5 years wasted on that spineless nerd, Laurel sighed. At least we'll be wealthy when this is over. I've earned it, putting up with this boring life for this long. The third file was a legal document, a forensic analysis of the prenuptial agreement Laurel had signed before their wedding. Max enlarged a particular section and smiled thinly. Vince had confirmed his suspicion. The document Laurel had signed contained subtle differences from the copy she kept. Her version omitted a crucial clause that Max had instructed his attorney to include, stipulating that any intellectual property theft would result in her forfeiting all claims to his assets and business. The sound of the shower stopped. Max closed the files and cleared his browser history. He heard Laurel moving around their bedroom, then the click of heels on hardwood. I'm leaving now, she called out. Don't wait up. This consultation might take hours. Have fun, Max replied evenly. I'll see you tomorrow at the venue. 2 o'clock, right? Yes, don't be late. And remember to pick up your new suit from the tailor. The front door closed, and Max waited until he heard her car pull away before making his final call of the evening. Solomon, are the divorce papers ready? Good. And a restraining order? Perfect. Have your associate bring them to the venue tomorrow at exactly 4:30 p.m. Yes, I'm absolutely certain. No, I won't change my mind. Because by this time tomorrow, there won't be anything left to salvage. Max poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and raised his glass to the empty room. Happy anniversary, Laurel, he murmured before downing the amber liquid in one swallow. Morning brought a flurry of text messages from Laurel, micromanaging every detail of the celebration. Max responded with brief, agreeable messages while methodically executing his own preparations. He visited his bank and transferred funds to newly established accounts. He met with Solomon for a final review of the legal strategy. He collected a package from Vince containing USB drives and sealed envelopes. By the time Max arrived at the luxurious Bellevue Hotel at exactly 2 p.m., he was the picture of calm. The event space had been transformed with elegant decorations, flowers, and champagne fountains, all charged to their joint credit card, of course. Laurel greeted him with a practiced smile, resplendent in a designer dress that had cost more than some people's monthly salary. You're on time. Miracle of miracles, she said, straightening his tie with manicured fingers. Try to smile and mingle, will you? These are important people. Important to her, perhaps. Max recognized several executives from Synapse Technologies among the guests, including the CEO, Bennett Walsh. Declan Reed stood by the bar, watching Laurel with poorly disguised hunger in his eyes. Max smiled politely, shook hands, and played the role of devoted husband as the celebration began. Cocktails flowed, a string quartet played, and professionally taken photographs documented what appeared to be a perfect marriage celebration. At precisely 4:15 p.m., Laurel tapped her glass for attention. The guests gathered around as she prepared to make a toast. Max positioned himself directly across the table from her, a manila envelope in his hand. 5 years ago, Laurel began, her voice carrying through the now quiet room. I married a man I thought would be going places. Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. Instead, I've spent 5 years waiting for him to become the success he promised he'd be." Her friends smirked encouragingly. Declan watched with barely concealed amusement. Laurel raised her champagne glass higher. "So here's to 5 years wasted on a spineless nerd," she said with a cruel smile. "May the next 5 bring better opportunities." The guest's snickers died as Max slammed the envelope across the table with enough force to make the champagne glasses jump. "Hilarious," Max said, his voice deadly calm. "Because this counterfeit prenup means you walk away penniless. And those explicit messages with your brother's business partner? They've just been sent to everyone in your contacts." The color drained from Laurel's face as phones throughout the room began to buzz with incoming messages. "What have you done?" she whispered. Max's smile was cold as winter. "I've merely ensured that everyone knows exactly who you are, Laurel, including your family." On cue, Solomon Winters entered the room with a younger associate, both carrying legal portfolios. "The legal team has arrived with divorce papers," Max announced to the shocked crowd. "I suggest we handle this before the cake is served." But as Laurel stood frozen in humiliation, Max knew the devastating revelation was yet to come. Chapter 4. The Glass House Shatters. The anniversary party descended into chaos within minutes of Max's announcement. Guests murmured and stared at their phones, viewing the explicit messages and photos that had just been mass distributed from Laurel's email account. Her brother, Clayton, who had arrived late, stared at Declan Reed with growing rage as he scrolled through his phone. "You've been sleeping with my sister and my business partner?" he demanded, advancing toward Declan. Declan backed away. "Clay, I can explain. You told me the information was from a legitimate corporate source." Clayton shouted. "You said we had a legal consulting agreement with Quantum." Max approached Solomon Winters and his associate. "Please serve Mrs. Thorne with the divorce papers. I believe there are also some federal agents who would like to speak with her and Mr. Reed." As if on cue, four individuals in dark suits entered the venue, credentials in hand. "Declan Reed? Laurel Thorne? I'm Special Agent Pearson with the FBI's Corporate Espionage Division. We need to ask you some questions about the illegal transfer of protected intellectual property." Laurel staggered backward, clutching a chair for support. "Max, you can't do this. This is insane." "Actually, I can and I have." Max turned to face the stunned crowd. "I apologize for the dramatic end to what should have been a celebration. Please enjoy the remainder of the refreshments if you wish to stay." He nodded to Solomon, who handed him a glass of water. Maxwell's hand was steady as he took a sip, appearing unervingly composed despite the scene unfolding around him. "You've been investigating me?" Laurel hissed, tears of rage forming in her eyes. "Spying on me? For how long?" 7 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days, Max answered precisely. "Approximately 1 week after you began stealing from my company and sleeping with him." He tilted his head toward Declan, who was now being questioned by the federal agents in a corner. Laurel's composure cracked entirely. "You cold, calculating bastard. You set this all up." "No, Laurel. You set this up when you decided to betray me, both personally and professionally. I merely ensured you would face the consequences." The FBI agents approached Laurel next. "Mrs. Thorne, we need you to come with us for questioning regarding the theft of proprietary information from Quantum Solutions." As the agents escorted Laurel and Declan from the venue, Max turned to find Bennett Walsh, the CEO of Synapse Technologies, watching him with a mixture of shock and reluctant admiration. "I had no knowledge of Reed's methods," Walsh insisted. "Synapse doesn't condone corporate espionage." "Save it for your board of directors," Max replied. "I suspect they'll be looking for a new CEO once the SEC investigation begins." He checked his watch, which should be approximately now. Walsh's phone rang as if on cue. His face paled as he answered it and stepped away. Tessa, Max's assistant, approached with a tablet. "The press release has gone out as scheduled," she informed him quietly, "and the secure server transfer is complete. All client data has been moved to the new system." "Thank you, Tessa. You've been invaluable." As the crowd thinned, Max noticed Clayton standing alone by the bar, looking shell-shocked. Max approached him cautiously. "I didn't know," Clayton said without looking up. "About Laurel and Declan, or about stealing your company's information." I swear it. I believe you, Max said, surprising himself with the realization that he did. Your sister and Reed kept you in the dark because they knew you wouldn't approve. Clayton downed his drink. 5 years ago, I told Laurel she was making a mistake marrying someone so quickly. I thought you were the wrong man for her. He shook his head. Turns out she was the wrong woman for you. She underestimated me, Max said simply. Everyone does, eventually. The aftermath of the party stretched into the evening. Most guests had left, embarrassed to have witnessed such a public implosion. Max remained, methodically gathering evidence from those who had received the incriminating messages, building his case even stronger. At 9 p.m., his phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Max stepped outside to take it. This is Maxwell Thorne. Max, it's Laurel. Her voice was raw from crying. They're holding us for questioning. They're saying I could face federal charges. Max, please, tell them this was a misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding when you photographed my client list? Or when you copied my encryption protocols? Or perhaps when you laughed about how I'd be obsolete after the acquisition? Silence, then a sob. How did you know all that? You're not the only one who can plant recording devices, Laurel. The difference is, mine were legal because they were in my own home and business. What do you want? Money? I'll give back whatever I took. Max laughed softly. You have nothing I want anymore, Laurel. Not a single thing. They're saying I could go to prison, she whispered. Yes, Max agreed. Corporate espionage carries a sentence of up to 10 years. Add conspiracy charges, and you're looking at 15 to 20. Declan is facing similar charges, plus additional counts for coercing you to steal proprietary information. I wasn't coerced. It was my ID. Laurel stopped abruptly, realizing too late what she'd admitted. Thank you for clarifying that, Max said calmly. I'll make sure the FBI has a record of this call. Max, please. Goodbye, Laurel. Max ended the call and blocked the number. As he drove home to his empty house that night, Max felt neither triumph nor despair, only a cold satisfaction that justice was being served. The game wasn't over yet. It was merely entering its next phase. Chapter 5. The Phoenix Strategy. 3 days after the disastrous anniversary party, Max sat in his renovated office at Quantum Solutions. The building buzzed with activity as security personnel installed new systems and employees adapted to enhanced protocols. Tessa entered with a stack of newspapers and tablets. The business press can't get enough of the story, she said, spreading the publications across his desk. The headlines were variations on a theme. Corporate espionage, scandal rocks tech sector. Quantum Solutions CEO exposes wife's betrayal and competitors' illegal tactics. Synapse Technologies stock plummets amid FBI investigation. Max scanned the articles with clinical detachment. Any word from Solomon about the expedited divorce proceedings? He just called. Judge Levinson has agreed to hear the case next week, given the circumstances. The evidence is overwhelming. Solomon says it should be straightforward. Max nodded. And the other matter? Tessa's expression grew serious. Adrian's team completed the security sweep of your home. They found 7 additional listening devices not planted by your team. Analysis confirms they've been there for at least 8 months. This gave Max pause. 7 months ago, Quantum Solutions had finalized a revolutionary encryption algorithm that would have been worth millions to competitors. The timing wasn't coincidental. Have Vince analyze the devices. I want to know if they're the same brand Declan used in his previous corporate espionage cases. Previous cases? Tessa asked. When I realized what was happening, I had Vince investigate Declan's employment history. He's worked for 6 technology companies in the past decade. Each one experienced a data breach or lost a key innovation to competitors while he was there. Nothing was ever proven, but the pattern is clear. Max's phone chimed with a message from Adrian Knox. Search of Reed's apartment complete. Found the server. All stolen data recovered. Also found something unexpected. Coming to your office now. 20 minutes later, Adrian entered Max's office carrying a secure tablet. At 38, Adrian's military background was evident in his bearing and precision. He joined Quantum Solutions 3 years ago after Max had hired him to overhaul their physical security systems. You were right about Reed, Adrian said without preamble. He's been running this scam for years. But your wife wasn't his first accomplice. He handed Max the tablet. We found these files buried in his home server. Max scrolled through dozens of photos of Declan with different women, all in intimate settings similar to those with Laurel. Each folder was labeled with a company name and date. He finds vulnerable employees with access to valuable information, Adrian explained. Seduces them, manipulates them into stealing for him, then moves on once he has what he needs. Or once they've served their purpose, Max added, continuing to scroll. Has the FBI seen this? Not yet. I thought you should see it first. Adrian hesitated. There's more. We found evidence that Reed wasn't just working for Synapse. He's been selling information to multiple buyers, including some overseas entities that would raise national security concerns. Max set down the tablet. International corporate espionage. That changes things. It does, Adrian agreed. And there's one more thing you should know. We found communications suggesting Reed has an offshore account with nearly $30 million. Money that rightfully belongs to the companies he stole from, including yours. Max leaned back in his chair, mind racing through possibilities. What would happen if this information reached the right people at those companies? They'd want justice, restitution, possibly revenge. Exactly. Max stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. Adrian, I need you to compile a comprehensive file on every company Reed has stolen from. Contact them discreetly. Let them know we have evidence that could help them recover damages. You're building a coalition against him, Adrian observed. I'm ensuring that when Reed eventually tries to weasel his way out of this, and he will, he'll find himself facing not just me, but an army of people he's wronged. That evening, Max met with Solomon Winters at an upscale steakhouse. The attorney had been his legal counsel since Quantum's founding days when Max couldn't afford his full rates and Solomon had taken a chance on the promising startup. The good news, Solomon said after ordering, is that the divorce will be finalized quickly given the circumstances. The judge is appalled by the corporate espionage angle. Laurel won't get a penny from you or your company. And the charges against her? Solomon grimaced. That's more complicated. Her attorney is pushing for a deal. They're arguing she was manipulated by Reed, that she didn't understand the severity of what she was doing. Max's expression hardened. She knew exactly what she was doing, Sol. I have recordings of her bragging about it. I know, but prosecutors might offer her leniency in exchange for testimony against Reed, especially now that there's an international angle. Solomon studied Max's face. Would that bother you, if she got a reduced sentence? Max considered the question carefully. What matters to me is that she faces consequences proportional to her actions. If her testimony helps bring down Reed's entire operation and everyone else involved, that serves a greater justice. Solomon looked relieved. Good, because I've been approached by the FBI about a potential cooperation agreement. They believe Laurel can provide evidence against not just Reed, but executives at Synapse and other companies who knowingly purchase stolen information. On one condition, Max said. Whatever deal she makes must include a public admission of guilt and full restitution to Quantum Solutions for damages. That's reasonable. I'll communicate that to the prosecutors. Solomon hesitated. There's something else. Laurel has been trying to contact you. She sent letters to the office and tried calling from different numbers. I have no interest in speaking with her. Understand that. But she's making claims about crucial information you don't have. Something about Reed's connections to your past. This caught Max's attention. What does she mean? She wouldn't tell me. Said it was something only you would understand. Max frowned. His past before founding Quantum was straightforward. He'd worked at several tech firms, gaining experience before venturing out on his own. Nothing that would create any meaningful connection to Declan Reed. Unless, tell Laurel that if she wants to share this crucial information, she can do it through formal channels with her attorney present. I won't be manipulated into private conversations. Solomon nodded. Wise approach. Now, about the civil suits against Synapse and their board members. As they discussed legal strategy, Max's phone buzzed with an email notification from Vince. The subject line read, Urgent, found Reed's client list. You need to see this now. Max excused himself and stepped outside to call Vince. What did you find? Vince's voice was grim. Reed wasn't just selling to Synapse. He's been working with at least 6 other technology firms over the past decade, and one of them was Meridian Technologies. Max went very still. Meridian had been his employer 8 years ago, before he founded Quantum Solutions. He developed an early version of his security protocols there, only to have the company claim his work as their own intellectual property. The resulting legal battle had nearly bankrupted him before he fought his way free of their claims. When was Reed working with Meridian? 8 years ago, during your lawsuit with them. Vince paused. Max, I think Reed may have been involved in Meridian's strategy against you back then. The timeline matches. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about Laurel's betrayal or industrial espionage. It was personal. Reed had targeted Max specifically, perhaps out of vengeance for some perceived slight during the Meridian days. Send me everything you have on the Meridian connection, Max instructed. And Vince? Dig deeper. I want to know exactly why Reed came after me and how long he's been planning this. Max returned to the table, his mind racing with new possibilities. The game had just become considerably more complex and personal. Whatever Reed's ultimate plan had been, Max was now determined to ensure it ended with Reed's complete destruction. Chapter 6: The Counter-Move. 1 week after the anniversary party revelations, Max stood in the spacious conference room of Quantum Solutions, facing the anxious faces of his management team. The wall-to-wall windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, a visual reminder of how far the company had come under his leadership. The federal investigation has expanded beyond Reed and Synapse, Max explained, his voice calm and measured. Evidence suggests this corporate espionage network extends to multiple technology firms across the country. Quantum Solutions is now cooperating fully with authorities to dismantle it. Devin Myers, Max's chief technology officer and oldest friend, leaned forward. What about our clients? Are they at risk? No, Max assured him. Thanks to our contingency protocols, all client data was migrated to our secure backup systems before any compromise could occur. In fact, the attempted espionage has ironically become our greatest marketing tool. He gestured to Tessa, who distributed tablets to everyone at the table. Our security subscription services have seen a 340% increase since the news broke. Companies are terrified of being the next Synapse. They want protection, and they're turning to the firm that exposed the espionage ring. Nods of approval circled the table as the executives reviewed the impressive revenue projections. What about the personal side of things? Asked Fiona Blackwell, their chief financial officer. The press is still hounding you about Laurel. Max's expression remained neutral. My personal life is separate from our business operations. The divorce proceedings are moving forward, and I've made it clear to all parties that I won't be commenting publicly on my marriage. After the meeting, Max returned to his office to find Adrian waiting for him. We've established contact with 15 former and current executives at companies targeted by Reed, Adrian reported. 12 have agreed to join our coalition. The other 3 are still considering their positions. Good, Max nodded. And the offshore accounts? We've identified 27 accounts across 9 countries. The FBI is working with international authorities to freeze them, but it's complicated. Reed was careful. Not careful enough, Max replied. What about the Meridian connection? Adrian handed over a secure tablet. Vince found these communications between Reed and Lawrence Woodward, who was CEO of Meridian during your legal battle with them. Max scrolled through the messages, his expression darkening as he read. The exchanges confirmed his suspicion. Reed had been working with Meridian to undermine Max's position during the lawsuit. More disturbingly, the messages suggested Reed had continued monitoring Max's activities in the years since, waiting for an opportunity to strike. There's one more thing, Adrian said hesitantly. We found evidence that Reed was specifically instructed to target you through Laurel. This wasn't opportunistic. They researched her, identified vulnerabilities in your relationship, and exploited them deliberately. A cold fury settled in Max's chest. Not only had Laurel betrayed him, but she had been selected and groomed for that betrayal by people with a vendetta against him. Has Laurel seen this information? No. It was encrypted on Reed's private server. Max considered this carefully. She claims to have crucial information about my past connection to Reed. This must be what she's referring to. Will you speak with her now? Not directly, Max decided, but I'll have Solomon arrange a formal deposition where she can share what she knows under oath. Later that afternoon, Max received an unexpected visitor. Bennett Walsh, the now former CEO of Synapse Technologies, had arrived unannounced and was waiting in the lobby. Max instructed security to escort Walsh to a small conference room, making him wait for 30 minutes before joining him. When Max finally entered, Walsh looked haggard and defeated. I've been fired, Walsh stated unnecessarily. The board terminated me and is cooperating fully with federal investigators. I'm not surprised, Max replied, remaining standing. What do you want, Bennett? Information. Walsh leaned forward. Did you know that Reed was working for other buyers besides Synapse? That he was playing us all? I discovered that recently, yes. Then you should know that Reed isn't just a corporate spy. He's been using the information he gathers to manipulate markets, short stocks, and destroy companies from within. Walsh ran a hand through his thinning hair. He didn't just want her technology, Max. He wanted to destroy quantum solutions entirely and absorb what was left at a fraction of its value. This aligned with what Max had uncovered about Reed's connection to Meridian. Why are you telling me this now? Because Reed has contingency plans. Multiple ones. He anticipated being caught eventually and prepared accordingly. Walsh pulled a flash drive from his pocket. This contains everything I know about Reed's operation, including names of his other clients and targets. I'm giving it to you because I suspect you're the only person who can actually stop him. Max didn't reach for the drive. Why would you help me? Self-preservation, Walsh admitted. I want immunity, and I know you have influence with the federal prosecutors now. Help me, and this information is yours. Place the drive on the table and leave, Max instructed. I'll have my security team analyze it. If the information proves valuable, I'll consider speaking with the prosecutors about reducing your charges. After Walsh departed, Vince's team confirmed the flash drive contained legitimate intelligence about Reed's operation, including evidence that Reed had employed similar tactics against at least 8 other technology companies over the past decade. That evening, as Max worked late in his office, his private line rang. The caller ID showed Solomon Winters. Max, Laurel's agreed to a formal deposition tomorrow morning at 10. She's willing to reveal everything she knows about Reed's operation in exchange for consideration in sentencing. I'll be there, Max confirmed. Make sure the FBI and prosecutors are present as well. If what she's offering is substantial, it could impact multiple cases. One more thing, Solomon added. Clayton, Laurel's brother, has reached out to me. He wants to meet with you privately. Says he has information about Reed that even Laurel doesn't know. Max considered this unexpected development. Clayton had appeared genuinely shocked by the revelations at the anniversary party, and Max's instincts said the man wasn't involved in his sister's betrayal. Set it up for tomorrow evening. Neutral location, with security present. After ending the call, Max stood at his office window, watching the city lights. The pieces were aligning, but something still felt incomplete. Reed's operation was too sophisticated, too long-running to be the work of just one man with a grudge. There had to be someone else, someone powerful enough to provide Reed with the resources and protection he'd enjoyed for years. And Max was determined to uncover who that was, no matter the cost. Chapter 7. The Puppet Master. The conference room at Solomon Winters' law firm was arranged like a battlefield, with clear opposing sides. Max sat beside Solomon and 2 federal prosecutors, facing Laurel and her defense attorney across the broad mahogany table. Recording equipment and a court reporter documented every word of the formal deposition. Laurel looked markedly different after 2 weeks in custody. Her designer clothes had been replaced by a simple navy suit. Her makeup was minimal, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She avoided looking directly at Max as the proceedings began. Mrs. Thorne has agreed to provide complete and truthful testimony regarding Declan Reed's corporate espionage operation in exchange for consideration during sentencing. her attorney stated for the record. Solomon leaned forward. Let's be clear. My client is not offering any guarantees regarding leniency. The value of Mrs. Thorne's information will determine any potential benefits in her case. The senior federal prosecutor, Elizabeth Dawson, nodded. The government is willing to consider cooperation as a mitigating factor, provided the information leads to additional arrests or the recovery of stolen assets. With the terms established, Laurel began her testimony. Her voice was subdued but steady as she described how she had met Declan Reed at a charity event 2 years earlier. He was charming, attentive. He'd ask questions about Max's work, seeming genuinely interested. I didn't realize he was gathering intelligence, she explained. The affair began 7 months ago, after he'd spent over a year cultivating our friendship. And when did he first ask you to provide information about quantum solutions? Dawson asked. He didn't ask directly at first. He mentioned how impressed he was with Max's innovations, how valuable they must be. Then he suggested that Max wasn't fully appreciating my contributions to his success. Laurel swallowed hard. He made me feel important, valued. Eventually, he convinced me that Max owed me more than I was getting from our marriage. Max maintained a neutral expression, though internally he noted the calculated manipulation Reed had employed, identifying Laurel's insecurities and exploiting them methodically. When did you first provide Mr. Reed with proprietary information? Solomon pressed. About 6 months ago. It started with company event dates, client names I'd heard Max mention, small things that didn't seem important. Then Declan began asking for specific documents. Laurel's voice faltered. I knew it was wrong, but by then I was emotionally compromised. For the next 3 hours, Laurel detailed her involvement in Reed's scheme, providing names, dates, and specific documents she had shared. The federal agents took copious notes, occasionally exchanging glances as particularly significant information emerged. Then came the revelation Max had been waiting for. Did Mr. Reed ever mention why he targeted quantum solutions specifically? Dawson asked. Laurel finally looked directly at Max. Yes. He told me that Max was unfinished business from years ago, that he'd been monitoring Max's career since the Meridian lawsuit. She paused. Declan said Max had unknowingly crossed some very powerful people, and they had been waiting for the right opportunity to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. Did he identify these powerful people? Solomon inquired. Not directly, but he referred to someone he called the architect, someone who had been funding Reed's operations for years and had a particular interest in destroying Max. Max leaned forward. Did Reed mention any specific technology these people wanted from quantum solutions? Laurel nodded. The adaptive security protocol, your breakthrough encryption system. Declan said it was built on foundational work that rightfully belonged to the architect, and they wanted it back, along with all subsequent applications. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Max's adaptive security protocol was the cornerstone of quantum solutions' success, a revolutionary approach to data protection that adapted to threats in real time. It had made the company a leader in cybersecurity practically overnight. Do you have any information about this architect's identity? Dawson asked. Only that it's someone with government connections, Laurel replied. Someone powerful enough to bury legal challenges and operate without scrutiny for years. After the deposition concluded, Max and Solomon remained behind while the others departed. She's holding something back, Max said once they were alone. Solomon raised an eyebrow. You got that too? When she mentioned government connections, her left hand tensed. Classic tell. There's more she knows about this architect that she's not sharing. Max stood, straightening his jacket. I need to speak with Clayton tonight. His information might fill in the gaps. Be careful, Solomon warned. If this conspiracy is as far-reaching as it appears, you're making some very dangerous enemies. Max's smile was cold. They made an enemy of me first. They're about to discover that was a catastrophic mistake. That evening, Max met Clayton at a private dining room in an upscale restaurant. Security personnel discreetly positioned themselves nearby, and Adrian stood guard outside the door. Clayton looked nearly as exhausted as his sister had. Thank you for meeting me, he said as Max sat down. I know you have every reason to hate my entire family right now. I don't hate you, Clayton. You weren't involved in your sister's betrayal. No, but I should have seen it happening. Clayton ran a hand through his hair. The signs were there. Laurel's sudden interest in your work, her excessive spending, the late nights. I just didn't want to believe my sister could do something so calculated. What information do you have that Laurel doesn't? Max asked, getting straight to the point. Clayton pulled out his phone and opened a secure messaging app. After your anniversary party, I started investigating Declan myself. He wasn't just my sister's lover. He was my business partner. I needed to know how compromised my company was. He placed a phone on the table, displaying a series of messages. I found these encrypted communications on our company server. They're between Declan and someone using the handle architect. Based on the timestamps, they go back 3 years, before Declan even met Laurel. Max scrolled through the messages, his expression hardening as he read conversations detailing a long-term operation targeting not just quantum solutions, but Max personally. There's more, Clayton continued. I managed to identify the architect. He pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. His name is Senator Victor Hammond. Max opened the folder to find photographs and documents linking Hammond, a powerful senior senator who chaired the Technology and National Security Committee, to Reed's espionage network. Hammond was a major investor in Meridian Technologies during your lawsuit with them, Clayton explained. He lost millions when the company's stock tanked after you won your case. But more importantly, he had a personal stake in the technology you developed there. How personal? The foundational patents for your encryption system were originally based on research funded by Hammond's private technology foundation. When you improved upon that research and claimed it as your own intellectual property, Hammond considered it theft of his work. The final piece clicked into place. So Hammond has been funding Reed's corporate espionage operation as both revenge and an attempt to reclaim what he believes is rightfully his. Exactly. And he's been using his position on the Technology Committee to bury any investigations that got too close to Reed's activities. Max studied the evidence carefully. This is substantial, but prosecuting a sitting senator would be nearly impossible without irrefutable proof of his direct involvement. That's where this comes in. Clayton produced a small voice recorder. During our last partnership meeting, Declan received a call from Hammond. I recorded it without Declan's knowledge. Hammond explicitly discusses their operation against you and mentions several other companies they've targeted. Max took the recorder. Why are you giving me this? Hammond could destroy your company if he discovers your involvement. Because it's the right thing to do, Clayton answered simply. And because I owe you for what my sister did. Besides, Hammond has already started dismantling my company through regulatory pressure. I have nothing left to lose. The next morning, Max met with Vince, Adrian, and Solomon to review the evidence against Hammond and plan their next move. If we take this to the FBI directly, Hammond could use his influence to bury it, Vince warned. He's got allies throughout the Justice Department. Then we don't go through official channels yet, Max decided. We build an airtight case first, gathering evidence from every company Hammond and Reed have targeted. We create a coalition so powerful that even a senator can't silence it. That's a dangerous game, Solomon cautioned. Hammond won't just roll over. He'll strike back with everything he has. I'm counting on it, Max replied with a cold smile. Because when he does, he'll make mistakes. And that's when we'll have him. The trap was set. Now Max just needed Hammond to spring it. Chapter 8, The Trap Titans. 3 weeks after receiving Clayton's evidence, Max stood in his newly renovated penthouse apartment overlooking the city. He'd sold the house he'd shared with Laurel, refusing to live surrounded by memories of betrayal. The minimalist space reflected his current mindset, clean, uncluttered, and focused entirely on the tasks ahead. His phone rang, Adrian calling with their daily security update. Hammond's made his move, Adrian reported without preamble. The Technology Committee has announced a special investigation into potential security vulnerabilities in private cybersecurity firms. They've named Quantum Solutions as their first target for review. Right on schedule, Max replied, unsurprised. Have they issued the subpoenas yet? Just came through. They're demanding access to our client list, security protocols, and your personal communications going back 5 years. Excellent. Implement Countermeasure Phoenix immediately. Countermeasure Phoenix was the contingency plan Max had developed specifically for this scenario. For weeks, his team had been building a carefully curated collection of documents and communications that, while appearing legitimate, contained subtle markers and encrypted tracking protocols. When Hammond's team accessed these files, they would unknowingly trigger sophisticated monitoring systems that would record their every action. Already underway, Adrian confirmed. Solomon will respond to the subpoena tomorrow with the prepared documents. Vince's team is standing by to track access patterns. Perfect. What about our coalition? 22 companies confirmed. Their evidence packages are ready for simultaneous release if Hammond escalates further. Max ended the call and turned to his wall of digital displays, each monitoring different aspects of the operation against Hammond. The senator had taken the bait, using his committee powers to launch a thinly veiled attack on Quantum Solutions. Now Max needed to let Hammond think he was winning, right until the moment the trap closed. The next day, Max deliberately maintained a high profile, attending a technology conference where reporters inevitably questioned him about the committee investigation. Quantum Solutions welcomes any opportunity to demonstrate the integrity of our security systems, he told them with practiced confidence. We have nothing to hide and will cooperate fully with Senator Hammond's committee. Privately, Max had already begun leaking carefully selected information to trusted journalists about Hammond's investment history and connections to compromised companies. Not enough to trigger immediate suspicion, but sufficient to plant seeds of doubt about the senator's objectivity in investigating Quantum. 3 days later, Hammond escalated as expected, calling Max to testify before his committee in a public hearing. The summons was delivered with obvious satisfaction by Hammond's chief of staff. Solomon met Max at his office to prepare. This hearing is a setup, the attorney warned. Hammond will try to paint you as a security risk, potentially even suggest you've been selling secrets to foreign entities. I know, Max nodded. That's why we're going to give him exactly what he expects at first. On the morning of the hearing, Max entered the committee room in a perfectly tailored suit, projecting calm confidence despite the bank of cameras and packed gallery. Senator Hammond sat at the center of the raised committee dais, his silver hair and distinguished appearance masking the predatory gleam in his eyes. Mr. Thorne, Hammond began after the preliminaries, your company has developed encryption technologies that protect sensitive data for numerous government contractors. Yet recent events suggest your own security protocols may be compromised. How can the American people trust their national security to systems that couldn't even prevent your wife from stealing company secrets? The question was designed to humiliate and unbalance Max. Instead, he leaned slightly forward into the microphone. Senator, the breach you reference was identified and contained by our internal security systems. In fact, it was our protocols that allowed us to track the extraction of information, identify the recipients, and provide evidence to federal authorities. Max paused. I would suggest that the real question is why certain individuals were so interested in obtaining our security algorithms. Hammond's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Mr. Thorne, I remind you that you're here to answer questions, not pose them. Of course, Senator. I'm simply providing context for your inquiry. For the next hour, Hammond and his allies on the committee attempted to trap Max with technical questions, insinuations about his personal life, and not-so-subtle suggestions that Quantum's technologies might be based on misappropriated research. Max responded with precise, measured answers that revealed nothing they didn't already know while projecting absolute transparency. Then came the moment Max had been waiting for. Mr. Thorne, Hammond said with barely disguised contempt, documents provided to this committee suggest that the core algorithms in your adaptive security protocol bear striking similarities to research conducted under a government grant at Meridian Technologies, research you had access to before founding your company. How do you respond to allegations that your success is built on stolen intellectual property? Max allowed a brief silence before answering. Senator, I'm curious about the provenance of these documents. Since the only entities with access to both Meridian's research and Quantum's algorithms would be those engaged in corporate espionage against both companies. Murmurs rippled through the gallery as Hammond's complexion reddened slightly. The committee has various sources of information, Mr. Thorne. Answer the question. I'd be happy to, Senator. The algorithm in question was developed entirely by me after my departure from Meridian. While it built upon publicly available research, as all innovation does, the specific implementations that make it effective are original work protected by 12 separate patents. Max's voice remained steady. Interestingly, the only challenge to those patents came from a shell company that investigation revealed was funded through a series of offshore accounts tied to a private technology foundation. Hammond's knuckles whitened around his pen. Mr. Thorne, these insinuations. I'm not insinuating anything, Senator, Max interrupted smoothly. I'm simply providing the factual history requested by the committee. Would you like me to continue with additional details about that technology foundation's financial backers? Hammond abruptly changed course. Let's move on to questions about your company's client list. For the remainder of the hearing, Hammond retreated to safer territory, asking procedural questions that Max answered with meticulous accuracy. When the session concluded, reporters immediately surrounded Max in the hallway. Mr. Thorne, were you suggesting that Senator Hammond has a conflict of interest in this investigation? One journalist asked. I simply provided factual responses to the committee's questions, Max replied diplomatically. Any interpretation beyond that would be speculative. As Max departed the Capitol building, his phone buzzed with a message from Vince. They've accessed the bait files. Tracking systems active. Hammond's chief of staff downloaded everything 5 minutes after the hearing ended. Phase 1 complete. Now came the counterattack. The next morning, front-page headlines across major newspapers raised questions about Hammond's financial interests in companies competing with Quantum Solutions. Financial analysts began highlighting unusual patterns in stocks of companies investigated by Hammond's committee over the years. By afternoon, 3 separate ethics watchdog organizations had announced investigations into potential conflicts of interest. Hammond's office released a blistering statement denouncing the coordinated smear campaign against him and announcing expanded hearings into Quantum's business practices. That evening, Max hosted a private dinner at his penthouse for the executives of the 22 companies in his coalition. Among them were CEOs of firms that had lost millions to Reed's espionage operation, all of them now united against Hammond. Tomorrow, Hammond will escalate further, Max told the assembled group. He'll deploy federal agencies, regulatory pressure, and possibly even plan evidence suggesting national security violations. We need to be prepared to move quickly when that happens. Nadia Harlow, CEO of a biotech firm that had been targeted by Reed 3 years earlier, raised her glass. We're ready. Every company here has prepared their evidence packages as agreed. When you give the signal, we release everything simultaneously to the press, to regulatory bodies, and to the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. The key, Max emphasized, is timing. Hammond needs to commit himself fully to destroying me before we spring the trap. Otherwise, he could still squirm free. The next day brought Hammond's counterstrike, more severe than even Max had anticipated. Federal agents arrived at Quantum Solutions with expanded warrants, seizing servers and documents. Trading of the company's stock was temporarily suspended pending a regulatory investigation. Max himself was publicly named in a national security inquiry. For anyone watching, it appeared Hammond was systematically dismantling Max and his company. Behind the scenes, however, every action furthered Max's strategy. The seized servers contained additional tracking systems that recorded precisely which files were examined and by whom. The regulatory investigation provided a perfect opportunity to present evidence of Hammond's conflicts of interest directly to authorities. Even a national security inquiry played into Max's hands, as it gave him standing to demand classified information about Hammond's committee activities through his attorneys. When Hammond made his fatal error, it came from overconfidence. Believing he had Max cornered, The senator gave an exclusive interview claiming he had evidence that Quantum Solutions had been selling sensitive encryption technologies to foreign entities, a treasonous act, if true. It was the final element Max needed. The accusation was specific, defamatory, and provably false. More importantly, it represented Hammond abusing his office to make false claims against a private citizen. Max gave the signal. Within hours, all 22 companies in the coalition simultaneously released their evidence packages to the media, regulatory bodies, and law enforcement agencies. The coordinated action created a tsunami of information too substantial to ignore or suppress. Security footage showing Reid meeting with Hammond. Financial records linking Hammond's foundation to Reid's offshore accounts. Recordings of phone calls discussing the targeting of specific companies. Email chains revealing Hammond's direct involvement in suppressing previous investigations. Most damning of all was the evidence that Hammond had personally directed Reid to target Max through Laurel, with the explicit goal of destroying both Max personally and professionally as revenge for the Meridian lawsuit. Hammond's decades-long corporate espionage operation was exposed in its entirety, with incontrovertible evidence of his role as the architect behind it all. The trap had closed. Now came the reckoning. Chapter 9. The Final Verdict. The federal courthouse bustled with activity as Max made his way through security checkpoints. 6 months had passed since the exposure of Hammond's espionage network, and today marked the culmination of multiple criminal proceedings against the key players. Max nodded to Solomon, who waited for him in the main hallway. Together, they entered Courtroom 3, where Declan Reid's sentencing hearing was about to begin. The once charming corporate spy looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, his confident smile replaced by the haunted expression of a man facing decades in federal prison. Reid had been convicted on 37 counts of corporate espionage, conspiracy, wire fraud, and racketeering. Max took a seat in the gallery, ignoring Reid's attempt to catch his eye. After victim impact statements from representatives of targeted companies, the judge delivered her ruling. Mr. Reid, your crimes represent an extraordinary breach of trust and a sophisticated attack on American businesses. The evidence shows you operated with calculated precision over many years, causing billions in damages to dozens of companies. The judge adjusted her glasses. I hereby sentence you to 28 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole for the first 20 years. Reid's shoulders slumped as he was led away by marshals. Outside the courtroom, reporters surrounded Max. Mr. Thorne, do you feel justice has been served with Reid's sentencing? Max considered his answer carefully. Reid was an important instrument in a larger conspiracy. His sentencing is just one component of the broader justice being served today. In Courtroom 5, Laurel's sentencing was scheduled for the afternoon. Max debated whether to attend before ultimately deciding his presence was necessary for closure. When he entered, Laurel was already seated beside her attorney, her once immaculate appearance now subdued in a simple navy suit. She noticed Max immediately, her expression flickering between shame and something harder to define, perhaps regret, perhaps resentment. After their divorce had been finalized, she had attempted repeatedly to contact him, but Max had maintained his distance, allowing their communication to flow only through legal channels. As the proceedings began, the prosecutor outlined Laurel's crimes, but also acknowledged her cooperation. The defendant's testimony was instrumental in building cases against higher-level conspirators, including former Senator Hammond. While her crimes were serious, her assistance to the government has been substantial and ongoing. Laurel's attorney emphasized her client's remorse and the manipulation she had endured from Reid. When given the opportunity to speak, Laurel stood and faced the judge. I take full responsibility for my actions, she began, her voice steady despite obvious tension. I betrayed my husband's trust, violated legal and ethical boundaries, and participated in crimes that harmed many people and businesses. While I was manipulated by Declan Reid, the choice to participate was ultimately mine. She paused, stealing a glance at Max before continuing. I have cooperated fully with authorities and will continue to do so. I ask not for leniency I don't deserve, but for the opportunity to eventually make amends for the damage I've caused. The judge considered her statement before delivering the sentence. 5 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 3 years, followed by 5 years of supervised release and financial restitution to Quantum Solutions. As Laurel was led away, she locked eyes with Max momentarily. He maintained his neutral expression, offering neither forgiveness nor additional condemnation. Some betrayals went beyond what could be pardoned, and Max had made peace with closing that chapter of his life permanently. The most significant proceeding occurred in Courtroom 1, where Senator Victor Hammond faced the culmination of his spectacular fall from power. Max joined a packed gallery for the sentencing hearing of the once untouchable politician. Hammond had been convicted on multiple counts of conspiracy, racketeering, abuse of office, obstruction of justice, and violation of ethics laws. The evidence assembled by Max's coalition had been overwhelming, leaving Hammond's high-priced legal team with few defenses. When Hammond was brought in, the former senator appeared dramatically aged by his 7 months in custody. Gone was the commanding presence that had intimidated congressional witnesses for decades. In its place stood a diminished figure whose eyes still burned with resentment when they briefly met Max's gaze. After the prosecutor's statement outlining the extraordinary scope and duration of Hammond's crimes, the judge invited the former senator to speak. Hammond approached the podium with as much dignity as his shackles allowed. "Your Honor, while I respect this court's verdict, I maintain that my actions were always in service to national security interests. The technologies developed by companies like Quantum Solutions carry significant implications for America's cybersecurity landscape. My oversight was aggressive but necessary." The judge's expression made clear she found this characterization unconvincing. "Senator Hammond, the evidence presented during your trial demonstrated conclusively that your actions were motivated by personal financial gain and vengeance, not national security concerns. Your abuse of your position represents one of the most significant betrayals of public trust this court has encountered." The sentence, when delivered, was appropriately severe: 35 years in federal prison, forfeiture of all assets connected to his criminal enterprise, and $400 million in restitution to the companies he had targeted. As Hammond was led away, he stopped briefly near where Max sat and spoke in a low voice that only Max could hear. "You think you've won, Thorne, but you have no idea what forces you've disturbed. Some games continue even when key players are removed from the board." Before Max could respond, marshals moved Hammond along. The cryptic threat lingered in Max's mind as he exited the courthouse to face the wall of cameras and reporters. "Mr. Thorne, now that the primary perpetrators have been sentenced, what's next for you and Quantum Solutions?" a journalist asked. "Quantum Solutions will continue doing what we've always done, developing cutting-edge security solutions and helping our clients protect their valuable intellectual property," Max replied. "The exposure of this espionage network has created unprecedented demand for our services, and we're expanding to meet that need. And personally," the reporter pressed, "these proceedings must represent the end of a difficult chapter in your life." Max considered the question thoughtfully. Justice has been served, but that doesn't erase the damage done. Moving forward means focusing on building rather than dwelling on what was destroyed. That evening, Max hosted a small gathering at his penthouse for those who had stood by him throughout the ordeal: Devin, Tessa, Adrian, Vince, Solomon, and a few others who had proven their loyalty. Clayton had been invited, but declined, still working through his complicated feelings about his sister's role in the conspiracy. As glasses were raised in a toast to their collective victory, Max stepped onto his balcony for a moment of solitude. The city stretched before him, lights twinkling against the darkening sky. His phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. "Regarding Hammond's final words to you today, we should talk. Some games do indeed continue." "See." Max studied the message, suspecting it came from Clayton. Hammond's parting threat had suggested larger forces at work. Forces that might still pose threats to Max and others who had exposed the conspiracy. Rather than feeling dread, Max felt a familiar calm, resolve settling over him. Whatever challenges remained, He would face them with the same methodical precision that had brought down Hammond's network. If other powerful figures had been involved in the conspiracy, they too would eventually face justice. He typed a simple reply, named the time and place. Returning to his guests, Max rejoined the celebration with renewed purpose. The chapter involving Laurel, Reed, and Hammond was closed, but Max recognized that the greater story continued. The skills that had allowed him to dismantle a decades-long conspiracy would serve him well in whatever battles lay ahead. For now, however, he allowed himself this moment of victory. Hard-won, costly, but complete. The betrayers had been punished, justice had been served, and Maxwell Thorne had emerged not just intact, but stronger and more formidable than before. The ruthless architect of their destruction raised his glass in a private toast to lessons learned and vengeance achieved. Some men might have been broken by such betrayal. Max had transformed it into the foundation for his most significant triumph yet. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.